The phone call that destroyed my family came on an ordinary Saturday morning, but by the time I hung up, I discovered that the people I trusted most had stolen my entire identity and $600,000 of my future. Michael Thompson was enjoying his usual Saturday morning coffee when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. The voice on the other end was polite but direct. Henry from First National Bank, calling about his mortgage balance of $640,000. "Excuse me," Michael said, nearly spilling his coffee. "I don't have a mortgage. You've got the wrong person." But Henry had all of Michael's details: full name, birth date, social security number. The loan had been opened 4 years ago, he explained, with Michael listed as the primary borrower. 4 years ago. That's when his younger brother Danny had been house hunting, constantly showing Michael pictures of dream homes on his phone during family dinners. Danny had joked about his terrible credit score, while their mother had smiled knowingly and said, "Don't worry, honey. Family always finds a way." Michael's hands trembled as he ended the call. He sat frozen in his home office, the only sound coming from his computer's fan. Deep down, he knew this wasn't a mistake. He searched through old paperwork until he found it. A forgotten envelope from First National Bank, one of those promotional letters he'd tossed aside months ago without reading. Now it felt like a warning he'd missed. The reality hit him like a sledgehammer. Someone close to him had used his name, his credit, his identity to secure a massive loan. And there was only one group of people who had access to all his personal information: the family he'd helped countless times over the years with forms, applications, and financial documents. He'd always been the reliable one, the brother who solved problems instead of creating them. When Danny crashed his Ford pickup, Dad had said, "That's what insurance is for." But when Michael made even small mistakes, there was no room for error. Michael spent that sleepless night staring at the ceiling, wondering if they would have asked for help if they'd needed it. Honestly, he wasn't sure he would have agreed to co-sign such a massive loan. But that wasn't the point, they never asked. They just took. By sunrise, Michael couldn't pretend this was an innocent mix-up anymore. The timing, the paperwork, the silence, it all pointed to Danny. His little brother had been desperate for that house, unemployed with destroyed credit. Their mother's words echoed in his mind. Family always finds a way. Now Michael understood what she meant. He wasn't just family, he was their way out. Their backup plan. Their solution when everything else failed. The question now was, what was he going to do about it?
Michael called First National Bank and requested all loan documentation. The representative, Sarah, was professional and sympathetic, having no idea that the files she'd send would shatter what remained of Michael's trust in his family. When the email arrived, Michael opened the PDF with shaking hands. There it was, his name, birthday, social security number, and what appeared to be his signature. But something was wrong. The signature looked almost exactly like his, but Michael knew his own handwriting better than anyone. Whoever had forged it had practiced extensively, but they couldn't replicate the subtle details, the way he always hesitated slightly on the letter M in Michael, or how the T in Thompson curved just a bit to the left. This signature was too smooth, too confident. His was more careful, more deliberate. It was close enough to fool bank officials and pass legal verification, but it couldn't fool him. Michael knew who had written it. Danny had always been good at mimicking handwriting, a skill he'd used to forge report cards in high school. Michael spent the next several days gathering evidence. He pulled out old tax forms, medical documents, and student loan paperwork he'd co-signed when their father lost his job at the steel mill. Form after form bore his genuine signature, signatures Danny had access to and could have studied. The paper trail was devastating. Michael had helped his family repeatedly over 11 years, never imagining his trust would be weaponized against him. He'd signed forms for his mother's surgery, helped with Danny's college applications, even co-signed a car loan for his sister Rebecca when she was fresh out of college. Every act of kindness had been ammunition for this betrayal. At work, his colleague Jim noticed Michael's distraction during lunch. "You look like you're holding your breath, man," Jim said quietly. For some reason, Michael found himself telling Jim everything. Maybe because Jim was one of the few people who actually listened when he asked how Michael was doing. Jim didn't offer empty reassurances or try to minimize the situation. Instead, he pulled out his phone and handed Michael a business card. "Call this guy, Robert Chen. He's sharp, and he doesn't get intimidated by messy family situations." That's how Michael met attorney Robert Chen in a small cafe downtown. No fancy office, no impressive lobby, just a man with a notepad and black coffee who didn't waste words. Michael handed over his evidence, and Chen reviewed every page methodically. When he finished, Chen looked directly at Michael and said, You understand what this is, right? This is fraud and identity theft. At minimum. The words hung in the air like a death sentence for his family relationships. I don't want to destroy their lives, Michael told Chen, his voice barely above a whisper. I just want this mess cleaned up. Chen leaned forward. You're not destroying anyone's life. You're reclaiming what's yours. The attorney laid out the process step by step. File a police report, formally dispute the mortgage with the bank, gather additional evidence, and potentially press criminal charges. It won't be easy, Chen warned. And once you start, there's no going back. This will burn whatever bridges remain. Michael thought about that word, bridges. As if any real connection still existed between him and his family. As if he hadn't been walking alone on this road for years. That evening, Michael found an old birthday card from his mother in a box of keepsakes. Her round, flowing handwriting read, Happy 52nd to our steady one. We don't say it enough, but you've always been our rock, our backup plan. We're so lucky to have you. Their backup plan. The words that once seemed affectionate now felt like a knife in his chest. They'd always seen him as the strong one, the one who wouldn't say no, the one who could handle whatever they threw at him. But Michael was done being their backup plan. He drove to his parents' house, the white ranch with the red shutters and cracked driveway, clutching a folder of evidence so tightly it might have burned through the leather. He hadn't spoken to them since receiving the loan documents, since sitting in Chen's office and realizing this wasn't just a family misunderstanding. It was a crime. Still, he knocked. His mother opened the door immediately, smiling broadly. Michael, sweetheart, perfect timing. I just pulled the pot roast out of the oven. She acted like nothing had happened, like everything was normal. Danny was sprawled on the couch with his phone, an empty beer bottle beside him. His father sat in his favorite recliner, eyes glued to a Steelers game. Nobody looked at him too long. It was as if they didn't know, or didn't care, what he'd discovered. Michael stayed quiet through dinner. They had pot roast, mashed potatoes, and green beans with too much butter. His mother chattered about neighborhood gossip. Danny complained about his landlord raising rent. Dad grunted at the television. Michael waited until the dishes were cleared. Then he finally spoke. Quick question, he said casually. 3 heads turned toward him. They looked relaxed. No stress, just expecting another routine question about family logistics. Does anyone know anything about a mortgage with my name on it? The silence that followed could have choked the room.
The kind of silence that followed Michael's question made the air feel thick and poisonous. Danny's shoulders tensed. His mother's smile froze mid-expression. His father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Michael didn't move. He didn't look away. He waited. Finally, his mother spoke in that soft, soothing voice she used when discussing minor household issues. Oh honey, that's just some paperwork Danny needed help with to qualify. You're not actually paying for anything. It's just family helping family. Danny added without looking up from his phone. You've got good credit, Mike. I don't. It's not fair if you won't help us out. Not fair. Like Michael was being selfish for asking. Like they hadn't committed a felony. Like this was completely normal behavior. His father chimed in from his recliner. Your brother needed a break, son. We all pitch in when family needs help. Michael looked at them. Really looked at them. The woman who'd raised him. The brother he'd protected from bullies in school. The father who'd once called him my steady rock during tough times. And he saw it clearly now. They didn't think what they'd done was wrong. They thought it was expected. They believed Michael should be the one to carry the weight, quietly and without complaint, just like he always had. Thanks for explaining, Michael said calmly, nodding once. Danny relaxed and went back to scrolling. His father reached for the TV remote. His mother looked relieved, like a minor problem had been resolved. But none of them saw what had really changed. They didn't realize they'd just lost him forever. Michael was still the same person, still quiet, still the one who didn't cause scenes. He hadn't come to his parents' house to fight or create drama. He'd come to listen, to give them a chance to tell the truth, maybe even apologize. Instead, they'd used that opportunity to justify their theft. They didn't say sorry, they made excuses. They explained why stealing his identity was actually reasonable, even necessary. The next morning, Michael drove to the police station and filed a formal report. Officer Martinez looked tired, like he'd dealt with countless family disputes before. He was kind but careful, reading through Michael's evidence with growing seriousness. Are you sure you want to move forward with this? Martinez asked, not because he doubted Michael's story, but because he knew how difficult family prosecutions could be. If I don't, Michael replied quietly, they'll just keep doing it. Martinez nodded, stamped the papers and made it official. That afternoon, Michael mailed a certified letter to First National Bank disputing the fraudulent mortgage. The war had begun. Michael didn't call his family after filing the police report. No warnings, no explanations, no angry confrontations, just silence. For the first time in decades, he let his actions speak louder than his words. 4 days passed, then 5, then a full week of complete silence. No calls, no texts, just the heavy feeling of waiting for the inevitable explosion. It came on a Tuesday evening just after sunset. A sharp knock at his door made Michael look through the peephole. His mother stood there in her best coat, her face tight with a mixture of rage and panic. He opened the door but didn't invite her in. She didn't wait for permission. "How could you?" she hissed, stepping forward. "How dare you go to the police?" Her voice was sharp, but underneath Michael heard something else, fear. Not fear for his well-being, but fear of consequences. Fear of being caught. "I trusted you to be understanding," she continued. "Danny needed help. Family is supposed to stick together." "No," Michael said quietly. "Family asks. They don't steal." She blinked, clearly shocked by his calm response. "You've ruined everything," she snapped. "Do you even know how this makes us look in the neighborhood?" Michael almost laughed, but he didn't. "I didn't ruin anything," he said evenly. "I just stopped pretending it wasn't already broken." She opened her mouth to argue more, but Michael was already closing the door. The latch clicked shut, a soft sound that felt louder than any shouting match. That night, Danny called 15 times. He left 8 voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. Michael deleted them all without listening. The next morning brought an email from First National Bank. "We have suspended the mortgage loan pending further investigation." The bank apologized and confirmed they were reviewing notary records and signature authenticity. Michael's credit score was still damaged, but something had finally shifted. The truth was being acknowledged. He called Chen with the update. "They're taking it seriously," Michael said. "They usually do," Chen replied, "especially when you don't scream and just present the facts." Chen was right. Michael hadn't raised his voice, hadn't begged anyone to believe him. He'd simply stood still and let the truth speak for itself. In the weeks that followed, the silence from his family deepened. No more texts, no more dinner invitations, no more messages about how he should be grateful for the family he had. They weren't trying to repair the damage. They just missed the old version of Michael. The one who always said yes, who never asked questions, who absorbed their problems without complaint. But that version of Michael was gone forever. Months passed. Spring arrived slowly, with dogwood trees blooming in soft whites and pinks around Michael's neighborhood. The world seemed ready for a fresh start, even if he wasn't entirely sure he was. Michael kept his life simple during the legal proceedings. He responded to emails from Chen, signed documents, and checked his credit report religiously. The case wasn't closed and the damage lingered, but something fundamental had changed inside him. His weekends became truly his own. He hiked trails at Raccoon Creek State Park, joined a woodworking class at the community center, and started volunteering at the local library every Saturday morning. Nothing dramatic, but all of it belonged entirely to him. Hours that didn't serve anyone else's agenda. One Saturday, Michael set up a small booth at the Peters Township Craft Fair. His table displayed cutting boards and picture frames he'd made himself. They weren't perfect, but they were honest work, pieces that existed because he'd chosen to create them. An elderly woman picked up a small jewelry box he'd labeled Second Chances. It was slightly asymmetrical, with visible wood grain and hand-sanded edges. "Why did you name it that?" she asked. Michael smiled and shrugged. "Because it wasn't supposed to turn out this way," he said. "But sometimes that makes it more beautiful." She smiled too, paid in cash, and walked away with her purchase. That evening, Michael sat on his back deck with a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. For the first time in years, the silence around him felt peaceful, not the silence of being forgotten, but the silence of being free. That's when he saw them. His mother, father, and Danny stood at the edge of his driveway, not approaching but not leaving either. They looked uncertain, like they weren't sure whether to come forward or retreat. Michael didn't move from his deck chair. He could see that Danny's hair was unwashed, his father's shirt wrinkled and untucked. His mother clutched her purse tightly, like it was the only stable thing in her world. After several minutes, Michael walked slowly down his front steps. He wasn't in a rush, and he wasn't hiding. When they saw him approaching, they stopped shifting nervously. Michael, his mother said softly, her voice shaking. We made mistakes, but we're still family. Danny stepped closer. I just need help for a little while longer. Please don't shut us out. But Michael didn't feel angry anymore. He didn't want to yell or argue. He just felt calm, because he finally knew the truth. Michael looked at each family member carefully, really studying their faces. He could see the desperation in their eyes, the panic beneath their words. They weren't here because they loved him or missed him. They were here because they needed him again. I hope, Michael said gently, that someday you understand what real family actually means. They stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. It's not something you can steal, he went on. It's not something you can fake or demand only when it benefits you. Michael reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside was a copy of the fraudulent mortgage document with his forged signature. Across the top, stamped in red ink, was the word, void. Behind that document, he'd placed something else, the old birthday card that called him their backup plan. He handed the envelope to his mother. Her hands trembled as she accepted it. I'm not angry anymore, Michael said quietly. She opened her mouth like she wanted to respond, but Michael didn't wait. I'm finally free, he continued. And I'm not coming back. Then he turned and walked toward his house. His footsteps on the concrete felt heavier than any argument he could have shouted, more final than any words of anger. At his front door, Michael paused and turned back. The sun was setting behind them, casting long shadows across his lawn. A gentle breeze lifted the edge of his jacket. He spoke softly, more to himself than to them. Sometimes walking away is the loudest thing you can ever say. And he meant every word. They had used his name like it belonged to them, borrowed his identity like a tool to be discarded when no longer needed. But Michael had taken it back, not through screaming or begging, but through quiet, determined action. As he stepped inside and closed the door behind him, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in decades, complete peace. The silence that followed wasn't empty or lonely. It was full of possibility. 6 months later, Michael received a final letter from Chen. The mortgage had been completely voided, his credit was being restored, and the bank had implemented new verification procedures to prevent similar fraud. Danny faced probation and restitution payments, but no jail time. Michael kept the letter in his woodworking toolbox, next to plans for his next project. He'd learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't fighting back, it's simply refusing to carry someone else's weight anymore. Some truths aren't said to be forgiven. They're said to be free.